The Rwanda genocide was a mass murder of around 800,000 people in about 100 days. It all began when Rwanda president was killed in a plane crash on April 6, 1994. The plane was shot down by the Hutu extremists. The Hutu extremists quickly seized control of the government, and over the next 100 days, an average of 8,000 Rwandans per day were murdered. That's approximately 10% of the population. From the very start, America resisted getting involved with Rwanda because of national interests and so-called higher priorities. And sadly, the U.S. did not take several opportunities of intervention that could have stopped the killing.
It is a very tense situation, and I just want to assure the families of those who are there that we are doing everything we possibly can to be on top of the situation, to take all appropriate steps to try to ensure the safety of our citizens there.
President, the cries of the victims in Rwanda have been heard, calling upon the Security Council to act. The sheer magnitude of the humanitarian disaster in that tragic country demands action.
When the Security Council voted for a stronger UNAMIR, what did you think was actually going to happen?
Nothing was going to happen. Nothing was, and that's what happened.
Nothing.
Nothing.
Because?
Because this was a document that looked great on paper, but didn't have really much of a chance of ever being implemented. Because fundamentally, member states weren't going to provide the resources to carry out that plan.
A Defense Department discussion paper prepared for a meeting of officials having responsibility on the crisis is filled with cautions about the U.S. becoming committed to taking action. The word genocide was a concern. Genocide finding could commit the U.S. to actually do something.
We have every reason to believe that acts of genocide have occurred.
How many acts of genocide does it take to make genocide?
Alan, that's just not a question that I'm in a position to answer.
It's true that that you have specific guidance not to use the word genocide in isolation, but always to preface it with this word acts of.
I have guidance which I try to use as best as I can. I'm not. I have. There are formulations that we are using that we are trying to be consistent.
The 1948 Convention on the Prevention and Punishment of the Crime of Genocide defines genocide as any of the following acts committed with the intent to destroy, in whole or in part, a national, ethnical, racial, or religious group, including killing members of the group, causing serious bodily or mental harm to the group, deliberately inflicting on the group conditions of life calculated to bring about its physical destruction in whole or in part, opposing measures intended to prevent births within the group, forcibly transferring children of the group to another group. According to George Moose, the U.S. Assistant Secretary of State for African Affairs, Rwanda was not the first order of priority in terms of U.S. policies. One reason was because of the regional players, which were very good friends of the U.S. They also thought that if the situation really got out of hand, then it would be a real catastrophe. There were a lot of other reasons that made Rwanda of interest to the U.S., but it honestly was not the most important issue to us at the time.
The massacres could have been stopped.
Had they been deployed, we had enough troops.
So there was a moment. There was a moment
we just missed it. It was a fleeting opportunity. We just missed it.
Why was it missed?
Because there was no political will.
Their only mandate was evacuate white people. It could have been another mandate.
Could have been different.
It could have been different. But somebody has to decide it, that it will be different, and nobody took the decision.
I think the conscience of the world has grieved for the slaughter in Rwanda. But we also know from not only the Somalia experience, but from what we read of the conflict between the Hutus and the Tutsis, that there is a political and military element to this. So I think we can take the lessons we learned and perhaps do a better job there.
Responsibility starts at the top. And I know the president went to Rwanda and apologized and said he didn't really understand because he wasn't properly informed. This is not true. And as they were informed, they were adequately informed.
We talk about Rwanda as a failure of U.S. policy, a failure to intervene, a failure to recognize what was going on, and a failure to take action to stop genocide. But if you look at the Clinton administration's approach to it throughout the entire period, what you really see is that it was actually a success of a policy not to intervene. It wasn't a failure to act. The decision was not to act. And at that, we succeeded greatly. I think that anybody who still believes that the world will not let it happen again, who believes the words never again, is deluding themselves dangerously.
Genocide still exists today. For example, conflict over government power has included the killing and rapes of many civilians in Somalia. The world's response? There have been many failed attempts to bring peace in this region by the African Union, European Union, United Nations, and the U.S. The Burmese government has taken military action against the Karen people who practice Christianity in the Buddhist nation. The world's response? The U.S. and the EU have imposed sanctions restricting visas, investments, and imports from Burma. In the Democratic Republic of the Congo, 5.4 million people are dead since 1996. This conflict is sometimes called the African World War. The world's response? UN's mission, called the MONUC, is in the Congo to protect civilians, but little resources have failed to stop the killings. The Darfur genocide is taking place in Western Sudan and involves the killing of Darfuri people. The world's response? Failed UN peace talks and ineffective criminal convictions. In my opinion, no. We have not learned our lesson from Rwanda.